So the ranger in the visitor center at Chaco was telling us that over 70% of the roads in New Mexico are unpaved.
Are those state roads? So there are lots of ruins like this just kind of scattered throughout the canyon. This one's called Pavi, I think. Pavi? Pavi. I don't know. And it's an old great house, which I assume just means big house. So these ruins are kind of more in the outskirts, which kind of goes to show how many places there were that they built. Pueblo descendants of the people who used to live here don't like to use the word abandon when it comes to them just leaving these buildings, because it's part of their culture just to move on after a given time. So it's more like a relinquishment, but they still come back here and use many of the religious sites. See, the fact that they use wood right there in the construction makes it easy to date.
Currently standing in a room where ancient people once were. That's really cool.
We were just saying a minute ago that kind of the air and vibe of this place is kind of similar to what we felt at Stonehenge, where it just has a certain energy about it. So not sure if that's just the psychological effect, knowing that this was a place of great importance and was very sacred to people for a very long time, or if there is something to do with this spot on Earth. Maybe it's both. Also, Norelle told me to stop beginning videos with the words "so." I guess it bugs her. But kiva is a roundhouse used for cultural and religious purposes, normally with a fire pit in the middle. So each of these sites are just kind of littered with them. They're kind of maybe clan meeting places, center places, but they're definitely the heart and soul of these structures. So what's crazy is that these boards right here are over 1,000 years old, and somehow in the desert they didn't rot away, and they just maintained the structure all this time. So I was just talking about kivas, and it seems like most or almost all communities have one, but every now and then there's a great kiva, which is almost like a cathedral. And this is what one of those looks like. This is an epic construction project. I have no idea what the structures in the middle do. I might be able to look it up, but I know there's a lot of mysteries that even archaeologists don't really have a firm idea of what they do. But look at the benches going around the outside for everybody. Now, this is a center place. Imagine 1,000 years ago when this is covered up in a wood structured dome, maybe overlaid with adobe or plaster, and everybody's sitting inside. Maybe a few hundred people, maybe 200 people, all crammed in there for a ceremony. It would be analogous to probably what the Hopi still practice today. However, like their website said, we're not allowed to see that, photograph it, or even sketch it. The thing that is sure is that everything in this design is intentional. Everything from the layout, the recessions, the diameters of each of these well type things, they all had some sort of purpose and significance to these people. Now these are other smaller kivas, really different function, different design, but probably served a similar purpose to what the great kiva over there did for the entire group as a whole. Honestly, they kind of remind me of Freemason lodge setups. Just kind of that purposeful, ritualistic meeting place for people to come together and remind themselves who they are, and what they're about, what they're here to do. So again, all we know is that sometime in the late 1200s, this whole place was just abandoned. But again, not abandoned, almost relinquished by the people. Most likely due to climate change, lack of water, migration patterns, and just our culture believing that always, after a certain amount of time, it's time to go.
So this wall stretches like way down there. It kind of reminds me, although it's totally different, kind of reminds me of the last standing wall of an Roman amphitheater in Orange, France, that we visited on our honeymoon. And I wonder if, like, because this is on the back side, closer to the cliffs, which are over here, I wonder if it's like more protected from the wind blow, and so that's why these walls are standing. It could also be like this intense architecture that the ancestral Puebloans had going on, but it's just really cool.
Norelle just told me to stop filming because it's messing with her filming, because between the canyon and these walls, everything echoes. I could hear her and she's like 100 yards away. Here's another kiva. It's a small one. Probably just for families that live right here. These little apartments have been built all the way up, and then you get in through the roof up top. Interesting that they have drainage.
Look at how intense this architecture is. Like, with all these little chips of stone in addition to the mortar and then the big bricks. That's fascinating.
There's the entrance there. Go around the corner. Then inside, yet another kiva. And another one. There's almost a disproportionate number of kivas compared to the houses and people who could have lived here. Given that all the roads from miles and miles around come directly here, the best bet is that this is a cultural center where people would travel great distances, almost like Mecca. And they would use these as places to worship and pray and commune with the ancestors and with each other. All right, now before we go see the big one, the massive Pueblo Bonito complex, which is right there, we're first gonna grab some food. So we'll be making corned beef hash and eggs. It's about 11 o'clock, so it's about brunch time. Hope it's not sacrilegious for us to be making breakfast here, but we're in a parking lot, so I think it's okay. So yeah, we eat it right off the stove. Might as well. All right, now that we are fed and happy, we are about to go in and check out Pueblo Bonito, the star attraction.
So in some places these walls were as much as 5 stories tall. That's just insane.
To be clear, 5 stories is like the same size height-wise as the Tower of London. This was built about the same time too, but it's a lot bigger of a complex.
I think the Tower of London had like higher ceilings though.
That's true.
These people were short.
Well, you can't blame it on that.
So these massive rocks behind me were all that's left of threatening rock, which fell in 1941 after a heavy rainfall.
Building next to a cliff. Awesome in theory, kind of a mess in practice.
So these little doorways behind me were used during the first sanctioned excavations of, what is this place? Pueblo Bonito, thank you, by Richard Wetherell, who was one of the brothers who discovered Mesa Verde as well. So this area is actually the oldest portion of Pueblo Bonito, dating back as far as 850 CE. Had as much as 100 rooms. Cool.
So the beams between the floors, and it looks like we're on the 2nd floor right now, and the old beams that made up the floor and the roof of the story below are still in there.
I think the ancient Puebloans, do you think they had gutters like that?
No, I think we put those in there to keep those beams safe.
Yeah, probably.
Got more kivas. Right here, there. It's a similar setup, just a little bit smaller from the one in the Pueblo over that we were just at. But again, you have the 2 wells, some other circles, and the bench going around the edge. Now see, this one's set up a little bit differently. It's again a great kiva with the bench going around the edge, centerpiece in the middle, but now we have more of these rectangular pieces. My only guess is that the purpose for the different layout is for maybe different ceremonies or different uses at different times of the year, but I'm willing to bet most archaeologists, their guess is as good as mine. So I kind of suspect the Hopi know, but they won't tell anyone. So we know that the ancestral Puebloans cared about how they oriented structures because of how they built their roads as well. And it's interesting, this guy opens in this direction, and the great kiva we were just at opens in the complete opposite direction, and they have different layouts on the inside, so I wonder if that matters. Could be something like Stations of the Cross, where you move progressively through different kivas for different ceremonies. They also could be for the purpose of respecting different deities at different times, kind of like the Greeks had all kinds of temples in their cities. These could be to honor and respect respect different ancestors or different kinds of spirits. So for everything not round here, most likely had more to do with commerce and trade, and also housing. So we know that it was not just a religious center, but also a cultural center where people exchange goods and ideas. Only most of the ruins out here, not just in Pueblo Bonito, but in this entire Chaco Canyon, are still unexcavated. And I did see on the map out there a shadow of a kiva that would be underground right now. So it looks like they know it's there, but they didn't bother putting it on other maps because we can't see anything. Again, they got the rectangular spaces there, but this one has no side entrance. You must have had to go in through the roof, like this situation. No center rectangles in this one. This one has columns. It's not. Oh man, I don't know if you could tell, but this is about 3.5 feet tall. Okay. Wow. Check this out. Hey.
Hey. Both have the same idea.
Uh-huh. Hey.
Hey. Both have the same idea.
This one's not as bad. Yeah?
You can see all the wood structures that they used to.
So they had like 7-foot roofs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd be
Well,
hitting my head on the beam right now.
Sure.
Let's call it 6.
Yeah, how tall do you think the ceiling was in Tower of London? 20?
I think they said 11 foot, but I'm not entirely sure.
Seemed taller than that.
Well, when we went, it was only like 2 or 3 floors. So they had taken out the middle floors.
Huh. Here I thought it was original. It's like a grinding stone for corn. Getting the beams up here, going across to create the next story up. And again above that, so you got 1 story, 2 story. That's not a bad tall space right there. And then you got the ground floor. Oh. Ow. Honestly, these apartments are not half bad. I've seen cabins. There was one, where was that? There was a cabin we drove by earlier that had a sign that said 14 people lived in it that was about this size. Those were like European colonists. So, you know, they have different standards, whatever. I can tell you crouching down to get through. You're a giant. And this apartment is great because it has 2 entrances, here and here, and nice sweeping expansive views. Okay, this next room is kind of special apparently because it still has the original plaster on the walls, so we're gonna go check it out. So this is how all these rooms would have been. You could even smell it. The sign outside said this is original, which I kind of find hard to believe. These look fresh. Was I right in reading that this plaster is original? I can't believe that.
It says it's the original vigas and latillas in the ceiling of this room, which I think is the wood.
Still, that looks fresh.
Oh, okay, so they, wood samples were taken from these beams for tree ring dating. The sampled areas are indicated by small plugged holes filled with numbered corks or by sawed-off beams.
Oh yeah, check it out. I got holes here. There's a cork. Yeah, okay, these beams are original.
And then the lattice pieces underneath them are original as well.
Damn.
This is neat.
So everywhere that uses plaster in the US, I feel like cracks after 30 years. This has been 1,000 years. So, good craftsmanship, guys. Yeah, this is the ceiling, wooden beams, walls, and doorways were built in 1082. Oh, wait. Replastered to protect the old original plaster beneath the plaster. Okay, so everything's original but the plaster. But guys, stop putting graffiti on ancient sites. Right.
So that door up there are 7 in Pueblo Bonito, and this one appears to have been used as an astronomical marker.
It's okay, I can't say Pueblo, so
yeah,
it's all good.
When the sun rises on the winter solstice, sunlight passes through the opening and strikes the opposite room behind it.
Like I said, a lot of these kivas probably were aligned in different directions for different ceremonial purposes, and a lot of that probably had to do with the stars. Also, I noticed at the visitor center they got a sweet telescope back behind the building. I bet they get some good views out here. So I feel like we got a much more rich experience here than we would have gotten at Mesa Verde. Partially because Mesa Verde seems to be more about the survival of these people. Once they left here, it's clear that a bunch of them went up to Mesa Verde and camped out there, built that place up as fortification and protection, and then whatever tragedy caused them to abandon or relinquish this place caused them to leave Mesa Verde as well just shortly after. But it was a fraction of the size, and also that place was again about survival, whereas this place seemed to be the center of their universe. So I only just looked at the mirror and realized that I had like egg from breakfast right here. My dad would say it's good for leftovers.
Essentially.
To see the petroglyphs?
Yes.
You're not really up for a hike?
Well, I'm not up for a 4-mile hike. I mean, that would take a long time, and we would be arriving in Santa Fe at like 9 p.m.
Okay,
so
let's see one more of these things. And
no, there's a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just point the way and I'll drive.
Cool. So back up here is the cemetery where Richard Wetherell is buried. He's one of the brothers who found Mesa Verde and also did a ton of excavations here in the Southwest, including here at wherever we are. Chaco Canyon.
For the record, Norelle just started that video at the cemetery with the word "so."
Chaco Canyon.
Oh, there. Where is she? Where'd she go? There she is. Boom. And we are about to go into another one of these pueblos, large houses, great houses, and it's just scattered everywhere in this valley, and each one of them maybe served a different purpose, or they were for different clans or something. We know that the Hopi still operate on a clan-based system and have slightly different traditions for each, but we're gonna pop our head in this one, see if anything is special, but at the end of the day, there's so many out here, there's no way we could see them all. To give you an idea of how closely all of these giant houses are clustered together, we're going in here to Pueblo del Arreo. I know my aunt would kill me because I just cannot pronounce things in Spanish, but we're going right here, and Pueblo Bonito, where we are about 2 football fields that way. So again, they're clustered relatively tightly in this valley between these canyons. We could go in there, but instead I want to check out this kiva. It's different looking. What is different about this kiva is it has inner rings. So looks like different chambers that serve some sort of purpose, and then an opening heading, I'm not sure what direction that is, but giving away the sun, east, west. I think that's north. And it's facing due north, I think. The other ones were definitely east-west. Again, this one, that's west. This one seems to be oriented again to the west. Yeah, there's the opening, slightly off center. We got more apartments or storehouses. Some of the flooring is still intact. And another kiva right behind me. Right here. It seems to come out again to the west with this little capstone right here. People pop in and out. This whole society seemed to be about these rituals that somehow revolved around directions and potentially the stars, and we'll probably never know. It's not clipping too bad, but you can see that this great house is built right on the edge of this riverbed right here. That when they gathered, hopefully they had a nice stream of water running to support all these people who would be coming in. Look at all these little kivas. This is your friendly neighborhood kiva. This is your friendly neighborhood kiva. And this one's just for kids. This is the kids' kiva. It's like Thanksgiving, you know, just push them in there. It is kind of obvious though that climate change had some impact here, because this riverbed is bone dry. Now, hopefully, like, maybe water still comes through every now and then. I'm assuming it does. Some of this erosion looks fresh. But we do know that climate change had a big thing to do with the reason why they decided to stop using this site as their ritual center place. Just one more thought on these like outer chambers. Maybe they're not chambers, maybe they're like bleacher seats so that you can fit more people in here. Just a thought. It just occurred to me is that even though these are pretty thick stone walls, it doesn't seem like any of them are built for defense. Because all of the interior walls are about just as thick. It's more like they were built for longevity. It's almost like either A, they weren't worried about anybody coming and attacking this place. Yeah, that's the first thing I could get. But I guess we do have evidence of Anasazi killing Anasazi during the time of the fall, which probably has more to do with food shortages and clans fighting clans. So when this thing was in use, it wasn't like Mesa Verde where they had to get up and defend themselves from other people. they were fine being in a low valley and not having, you know, these walls for defense, but more as to establish that this is the spot on Earth where we come. So here's kind of an artist rendering of what one of these great kivas would have looked like, with the pillars and the roof, and then the opening doors there. That there was a Hopi tradition of taking the pots and jars and other pottery that were made and breaking them as they leave a place where they had occupied, as kind of a memorial saying that they were here, and they never truly abandoned a place. They simply move on to a new one, but still maintain a sort of spiritual connection with the places that they had once occupied. This is the biggest and most intact kiva they've got in the valley, and doing a little bit of restoration work here. Again, we got an east-west orientation opening towards the sunset. Probably not today's sunset, but one day during the year. Got a huge bench going around the edge. It's interesting because this is next to one of the great houses, which is probably one of the smallest of the great houses. Most likely for relatively small land. Maybe it's just this positioning is most ideal for multiple communities to come together at. Another reason they might not have needed walls is because this canyon creates a natural wall, and they'd be able to see it coming from a mile away trying to scale down those things. And Norelle's leaving without me. It's funny how he said that it has a similar energy to Stonehenge, when circular structures oriented according to the stars and kind of meeting places for people for a religion we really know nothing about. Still lingers. So Norelle just pointed out that Chaco Canyon isn't even in the National Parks guidebook that we had, and it is by far the richest Native American archaeological site that I've ever heard of, although I barely even heard of it before we got here. But yeah. Thanks to Craig Childs for letting us know. Great book, House of Rain. If you have several hours, you should definitely take a listen to that book and learn more about the ancient people of North America. Back at the Visitor Center to check out the petroglyphs, and just wanted to point out, if I can, see, that is the telescope I was telling you guys about. See, clearly astronomy, which is how you say it, definitely matters around here. Also, I wanted to point out how empty this parking lot is. I think altogether there's maybe 150 people in the entire park, total, including the rangers. So while the ancestral Puebloans did not have written language, they did like to draw pictures on occasion. We saw some back at Capitol Reef, and there are some up on the upper part of this cliff we're going to try to get to. And Norelle seems a bit discouraged that it involves a bit of an uphill climb.
You can see them from here. We're doing it, but like, I'm saying, you can see them from here.
I can't see them. Oh yeah.
Oh, lizard.
Yeah, I got one too. It wasn't that bad of a hike. Just a little steep. You gotta catch your breath at the end of it. Check these out.
Pretty cool.
We've got the spiral, which is symbol for apparently Journey to the Center place, which is supposed to be this place, but I guess it moves because now it's down on the Hopi Reservation. And some animals, snakes, a deer, maybe a chicken. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, it could be a raven. These were probably more to tell a story. It's like
These ones here with the salt in them.
yeah, but I don't know if there's actual characters, but
Yeah, I can see.
some sort of corrosion. But I would imagine that these are used for storytelling or teaching or something like that. So you get a bunch of people sitting on these rocks, somebody standing right here and explaining the story of what this means. So it could be passed down through generations. Got the cross. It looks like some footprints or handprints or something there. And then again on the other side there. It's almost like the same. MySpace checked it.
Well, I definitely got my fix for exploring ancient ruins.
Yeah, I think that's probably, look, I'm sweating bullets here.
Those petroglyphs were worth it, by the way.
Yeah, this whole canyon was by far, I think, the most underrated, like, historical spot in all of North America. Like, we'll leave all the Aztec stuff as separate from that, but all in the continental